In this lesson, I'm going to talk about how to thicken up your open voicings. Now, we've been going through a lot of tunes here using our open voicings, 1-5 in the left hand, and the right hand is always either playing 3 and 7 or 7 and 3, depending upon the demands of the melody that goes on top of one of those two positions. And the melody may be the top note of one of those two positions, right? 3 and 7 or 7 and 3. So how do we thicken up? How do we make the voicings a little fuller, a little fatter? What we do is add a tone, and we find out that we can add a tone very easily most of the time. Not all of the time, but most of the time. And that's the way a lot of this works with piano. When you get rules, you find out that they work most of the time, but not all of the time, and you have to be creative. And that's how we learn to do different things in different situations. So what we have, generally speaking, is when we play, let's say 3 and 7, if you're going to play with these two fingers, which is common, these two are reserved for the melody. These two are commonly used for the 3 and 7, and that means this finger in the middle is often hovering over a note that can be used to thicken the voice up, to fatten it. And that's generally one of the common ones is the 5. Often the 5 will be falling right here between the 3 and the 7. And then the other situation is if you happen to be using these two fingers, say if your melody's on top and you're playing a 3 and a 7, then you've got this finger, another strong finger in the middle, and that will often fall in the middle. So you get the 5 right there with this finger. Sometimes you'll be playing and your thumb's hanging around, and your thumb can go down. So you can put your thumb here and it generally will fall on the root note, or move it up a hair and it's the 9th. And to talk about that, because the 9th usually adds a more jazz sound, makes it into a jazz chord. And the root is a more plain sound, so we get it up there. So either way, you've got a finger generally hovering around this finger, or when you grip it the other way with these two, it's this finger. It's kind of a simplistic way to show you, but I think you're going to see if you mess around with it that this is what happens. Okay, so that's a very simplistic intro using my fingers. I hope you thought it was fun. I think you'll know what I mean when you sit down, and I'm going to show you on the keyboard here. So I'll get in a little closer here and talk about it. Let's come over to the keyboard here with my hands in this position and see if I can explain things a little more clearly. Let's take an A major 7 for an example. Now we'll split this up by taking the 1 and the 5 on the left down here like we do. And we've got our normal split chord A major 7 with the 3 and the 7 in the right hand. So you can see my fingers just laying here where the 5 to the chord is. So I can make the chord fatter in a very natural way by just including the 5. And if I want to add notes on the bottom, I can put my root note here. Now I've got A major 7 with a root on the bottom. The root's doubled because it's here and down here, and that's okay. It just makes the chord fatter. If I move my thumb up a whole step, I'll have a 9 chord. Now I have an A major 9 chord, A major 7, 9. Let's look at this same A major 7 chord if I play the chord like this with my thumb and 3rd finger here. Now if I have the chord like this, it probably means I've got a melody note on top that I'm going to play with one of these two fingers. Let's assume that melody note's going to be a B. So I have 3, 7, 9. My index finger's sitting here quite conveniently to fill the chord out even more. Now it spells 3, 5, 7, 9. Now let's take a look when our right hand is playing 7-3 and not 3-7. Let's stay with our A major 7 chord here. We've got our 1-5 in the left hand, and instead of playing our 3 and 7, let's play 7 and 3. And actually, let's bring it up here. We're going to be able to see what it is better up in this position. Again, let me start by using these two fingers, and that would probably generally mean I've got the melody on the top note here, the third of the chord, 7-3. Now I've got a couple of things I can do. I can add the root in here and get this nice crush tone, if you can hear it better here, down in this range. Let me bring it back up here. Or I can play the 9, that would be right in here. Let me bring it down in this range for you again. Or I can add the 5 here. And I could actually add back in these other notes up here if I want to, the root or the 9, and get a pretty big chord in my right hand. Nice big fat major 7 chord or major 9 chord. And now if you turn it around and use these fingers, the thumb and third finger, it would mean you've probably got a melody note on top that you're going to be wanting to play with one of these two fingers here. So again, we can do the same thing of adding the 9 here. If you add the root in here, it's a little uncomfortable on the hand. But if you like that crush tone, you might want to use it. But it's going to be easier just to use a regular 9. I'll use the crush tone sometimes because I really like the sound. If I got my melody note up here, I might like that sound. But it's very easy to get the 9 in. You've already got your hand just like that, and you just add the 9 simply, and whatever melody note you've got on top. Let's go to an A minor 7 chord here, and we'll see the same thing happens. We can have all the same choices. Here's our A minor 7. I'm going to take the 1 and 5 down here, leaving me with the 3 and 7 here. And if I want to add a note, I can put it right here where the 5 is. So I have 3, 5, 7. Or if I want to add the root, down here. And if I want to make a 9, I take it up one whole step and get this beautiful A minor 9 chord. And here is what we call a crush tone. These two notes are together in a half step and creates a beautiful sound, this A minor 9 chord. It's quite beautiful. Let's take this same A minor 7 chord, but play it with these fingers instead, with the thumb and the middle finger. And you would probably be playing it like this because you've got melody notes on top that you're going to be playing, or you might just choose to grip it like this. Either way, you've got the 5th available here again to fatten up the chord. And if you had a melody note here, say this B note up top, and you could do the same thing, put the 5th here, and now have a 4-note chord, a much fatter chord. Now let's take a look at the A dominant 7 chord. Again, here's our straight A dominant 7, 1 and 5 in the left hand. Same situations as before. We can add the 5, or add the root down here, or add the 9 here. But there's something we do here that's a little different. On the dominant chord only, we can play the flat 9, and that means we're going to take this 9 and put it down here. Or we can look at it from the perspective of here's a root note and bring it up a half a step to get this flat 9 chord. And once you're here, you can add the 5th also. And you've got a 4-note chord in your right hand that looks like a diminished chord. If I take my left hand away, you see a diminished chord shape. And you can roll this up and recognize that sound of an inverted diminished chord. But it's an A flat 9 chord, not a diminished chord. I talk about this a lot in some of our other open voice lessons, but it never hurts to go over it and keep talking about it because we use it often. The dominant 7 flat 9 is the most often used altered dominant chord when we're playing standards. We run across the flat 9 a lot, so we want to know how to play it and we want to understand it. So we've got our diminished chord shape if we took away the left hand and looked at it just like this, we'd say, well, that's a B flat diminished, or a D flat diminished, an E diminished, or a G diminished. It's all of those things. But we're playing an A dominant chord, so we recognize it as a flat 9. Let's look at our A dominant 7 chord. Instead of gripping it like this, let's grip it with our hands like this. And you would probably be doing this again because you've got melody notes on top that you're going to play with one of these fingers. But you might just grip it like this as a natural chorus also. But you might also just grip it like this because you want to. So we've got our 5th available as usual. If we have our melody notes up here, we've got a 4-note chord that we're going to play. There's our A dominant 7 9 chord. We just call it an A9 chord. Or you might have the root, or you might have the flat 9 here as a part of the melody, and we do see the flat 9 a lot as the melody when we're playing standards. Let me clarify something here. I refer to this as the most often used altered dominant chord. And what I mean by altered is we're altering the 9. Let me just make the 9 chord here. We've got our root 5, and then our 3 and our 7, and the 9 would be here, one step above the root. So that's a regular 9. Now when I say altered 9, that means we're altering the color tone. The 9 is the color tone. We alter it by, in this case, flatting it. So it's an altered dominant chord. And then it's the most common altered chord we use. Now I say that because there's a lot of altered dominant chords. There's a lot of colored tones that get altered. We have the 9, the 11, and the 13, and they either get sharped or flatted. And when we do that, that means we've altered the color tones, or we just say alter the dominant chord. We know that those color tones, one of them is being moved with a sharp or a flat in one way or another. Okay, but I'm getting a little off topic here. I just wanted you to know what I mean when I say altered dominant chord. And this is the most common altered dominant chord, the flat 9. We see it in a lot of our standards literature. Okay, let's go back to the piano now, and I'm going to take us through Autumn Leaves and see how we can apply this idea of fattening up the chords as we go through Autumn Leaves. Just like we studied it in lesson number 1, we're going to take a look at it again and see how we can make the chords fatter, applying all that we've talked about here.